Good evening. Welcome to Wine of the World Holiday Edition. I'm Andrew Hsu, President of the College of Charleston. Joining me here in the studio is Dr. Tim Johnson, Dean of our incredible School of Languages, Cultures, and World Affairs. Joining us via webcam from his home in New Jersey will be Adjunct Professor Dr. Mike Cohen, who is an amazing expert on wines. Tim, Mike, and I are delighted you could join us to celebrate the holidays in true College of Charleston fashion. Tim?
Thank you, President Hsu. It's a real privilege to be able to share the wine tasting with you and Mike, and also with all of our studio audience today and our participants. We're really glad that you joined us. This is the third time for Wines of the World. Third time is a charm, and I'm sure tonight will be a really great time. It is hosted by the College of Charleston Alumni Association. And I can't think of a better way to start a celebration than by saying thank you. Thank you to all our participants this evening, because by your generosity, we were able to raise over $1,000 for scholarships through the School of Languages, Cultures, and World Affairs, and these will be used for study abroad travel. As you know, as alumni, study abroad is a very vital part of our programming at the college, and it's a transformative experience for many students. Of course, we have been under restriction for the last 3 semesters because of the pandemic, and that has been difficult. But we anticipate this coming year, the good year, that the restrictions will lift, and we will have a backlog of students that will be coming forward to participate, and so the scholarship money will be very well used. So thank you very much. We also enjoy together as alumni an excellent camaraderie based on shared experiences. We have many shared experiences, and we have 3 tonight. As a student at the College of Charleston, we all engaged in second language acquisition, commonly referred to as the language requirement. Now, of course, the language requirement was a lot more about becoming multicultural, too. And, of course, this allows us to enjoy, secondly, thing we share, holidays such as this that are shared around the world. And third, of course, we enjoy a good red wine. And so tonight is just the perfect combination, because we have Mike Cohen with us, certified wine educator to teach us about some really great red wines. And on top of that, we are going to be able to learn some fun language phrases from each of the countries for these wines. We'll be doing some Spanish, Italian, and French. 250 years, the College of Charleston, and we're all proud of that, and we should be. 250 years of working together to create global citizens. And so tonight, as alumni, we will enjoy together Wines of the World. Mike Cohen, take us away for the wine tasting.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, and welcome, alumni. It is a pleasure to be here. I wish to thank President Hsu and Dr. Johnson allowing me to help out here. What I'm going to do tonight is we're going to go through the 4 wines that were previously sent out, but before we go there, I wanted to indulge you in a couple of little things. First of all, there's 2 rules to a wine tasting. Rule number 1 is to always have fun. Rule number 2 is see rule number 1. So you have to make sure that you have fun and have a good time with this. What I want you to do is I want you to take your empty glass and I want you to smell it. And the reasons being is that we don't want to have any contaminants in our empty glass if we are really going to be tasting wine. So we're going to be looking, for example, for traces of chlorine or anything else. So you want to be able to smell the glass and make sure that it's crystal clear. Okay, crystal clean, great. Now let's go ahead and let's pour. I'm sorry, I made a major mistake. I am sorry. Our bartender tonight is a college graduate from the College of Charleston, Grace LaBounty, 2016. Wave to the alumni, Grace. He is going to be our bartender tonight for President Hsu and Dr. Johnson. So we're going to pour actually our first wine. So if Grace, if you would be so kind as to pour President Hsu and Dr. Johnson a glass of our Burgundy. And while she's doing that, one of the things I want you to do is I want you to, everybody always takes the glass and they try to swirl it. I'm going to say hold off on doing that. The first thing I want you to do is just pick the glass up, and I want you to stick your nose all the way into the glass so that the rim actually makes a little indentation on your forehead. So let's go ahead and stick the nose all the way into the glass and take tiny, tiny little sniffs. Little tiny little sniffs, that's it. Now you can set the glass down, and now let's go ahead and swirl. And what we're doing by swirling is we're getting some oxygen into this, and we're getting a little bit more aromatics. Now I want you to sniff again the same way. Get your nose all the way in, little tiny sniffs. Is there a difference?
Yes.
Yes.
There is.
A little bit more aromatic,
That's really
right?
nice. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, now for a little bit of a weird mathematical thing, did you know that a circle has 4 corners? And actually it does. If you look at your glass, there is a top, a bottom, and a right and a left. And what I need you to do is I need you to smell the top of the glass or the top of the rim, the bottom of the rim, and then tilt your head to one side to only use your right nostril, and then tilt your head to the left to use only your left nostril. And then you will see that there's a difference in smell as well. So try that. So you smell the top, then the bottom, right and left nostril. And there typically is a difference because I'm a doctor and I can tell you these things, but your nose is not perfect. So you will smell things differently between the right and left sides. So this is our little bit of understanding of how to taste wine. So now let's go to our first slide. And let's go ahead and everybody take a little bit of sip of wine. And just go ahead and just drink it, have fun with it, and just swallow it, and then we'll go on to the other things. So what we're tasting tonight and what you have in the glass now is Burgundy. It's called a red Burgundy. The grape here is Pinot Noir. And if you look at your label, this is what you'll be seeing. This is a Burgundy label. And in this particular case, you can see the producer name, the village name is Beaune, the vineyard name is Clos de Mouche, and you can see bottled by, producer, location, alcohol content. This would basically be considered a premier cru, and I'll get to what that means in just a minute. This is a premier cru wine on this particular label. The ones that we suggested, we had all different levels that you could purchase. You could have a Village, a premier cru, or a grand cru option for tasting tonight. So if we think about Burgundy, let's talk about where Burgundy is. It's in the eastern, southeastern portion of the country of France. It only produces 3% of the entire French wine production. So very, very small production, but very, very high quality. In this particular area, they grow Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. They also grow some other grapes, which we really don't have to get into tonight. But Chardonnay outproduces red 2-to-1 in Burgundy. So they produce twice as much Chardonnay as they do Pinot Noir, which a lot of people just don't know. What we have right here is, you can see on the slide, Grand Cru, Premier Cru, and Village. These are the designations. So for example, a village wine, which is the common stuff, is about 35% of the production. Premier Cru, which you're seeing on the label here, represents about 12%. And Grand Cru is only about 2% of the production of Burgundy. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the map basically is showing you what is called the Côte de Nuit, which is the northern section, which is where the reds are coming from. And most of the time, what you're seeing here are Premier Cru and Grand Cru sites. The production that comes out of this is very, very small. And most of the time, what you're looking at is very, very small producers' names, very, very hard to get a large amount of their product shipped over to us. Can we go to the next slide? So, like I said, what we're tasting tonight is Pinot Noir. Now, this is a red grape. And one of the things that I've talked about before previously in classes is this is what's called a high acidity grape. Now, when you taste wine, one of the things that it will happen is that it will create a little bit of saliva in your mouth as a result of tasting or swallowing. That's what we call acidity. If there's acidity in wine or acid in wine, it will make you salivate. Pinot Noir does this very, very well, and it creates a lot of acidity. And that is good because the acidity in the wine will help break down foods. So this makes it a perfect food wine. Now, the thing about Pinot Noir is that it grows in certain specific soil types. And I think if you taste this, and I'd like to get your opinion, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Hsu, if you taste a little bit of what I call stoniness to this Burgundy, like a little bit of limestone maybe, or a little bit of chalk. Any of you get that?
Yeah.
A little bit, yes.
It's a little bit drying, so it's kind of nice in that regard, and that comes from the soil. So Pinot Noir that comes from this particular area does extremely well as far as a drier style Pinot Noir versus something coming from California. So a lot of people prefer this particular style because of the acidity and also because of the stoniness.
So this is a cool climate grape Pinot Noir?
This is from where this comes from. Yes, this is Burgundy, so this is much cooler than, say, Napa, California, or Sonoma, California. So as a result, that acidity is there. And so, for example, when you taste Burgundy versus something from Oregon or California, Burgundy does really well when it's matched up with food like coq au vin or roast duck or smoked turkey from Thanksgiving or anything that might be on the table for Christmas. It really is a delightful taste. If you taste the New World, which I mean California and Oregon, it has a little bit more of a fruit sense to it. Perfect. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so now you can see, now that you've got this in your hand, I'm wondering if you can smell any of these primary fruit flavors that you see on the slide, like cherry and plum and raspberry. And do you notice any of that, President Hsu or Dr. Johnson? What are your taste buds? What are they telling you when you smell this?
Well, I pick up the cherry more than anything.
That's great. That's the first thing that comes right out of the glass. Now, I'm going to give you another little tip. When you swallow, I want you to exhale through your nose. See, this is different because that's what's called retronasal tasting, and sometimes you will get nuances of flavor when you do that. Okay, it's a little bit different, and that's the way sommeliers are able to distinguish on a blind taste. They will exhale through their nose, and it's a little bit more informational on this. The other thing that this does really well is the cheese. This does really well, for example, with cheeses that come from that part of France. So that would be Comté or Gruyere, and this does really well. And the other thing that people talk about is if they buy Burgundy, is this something that I can lay down for, decades, 50 years? And the answer for that is mixed. I think that when you're looking at Pinot Noir to store, collect, or keep for a while, you're probably looking only about 10 to 20 years at the most. California, about 10 years. So again, this is particularly not the wine that you'd probably would not want to really lay down for very, very long.
I really like the cheese with it, Mike. Is there a particular reason for that?
Well,
The
that's a
cheese
great
goes
question
so well?
because cheese is very mouth coating. And the nice thing about, remember we talked about the acidity from this Pinot Noir. That acid cuts right through the cheese.
I see.
So if there's also a lot of different aromatics that are tough to pick up, especially when you don't have something like this in front of you. It's a lot easier to pick up some of the nuances of flavor when you have these specific explanations in front of you. So this is a difficult slide to understand because you have to look at what would be a young versus a mature wine. And basically what you have in your hand would be a mature wine. So if you look on the little tiny grayscale, you can see that the nuances of tastes, for example, forest floor and the autumnal truffle and leather, might be some of the subtle things that you find in this particular wine. So again, this would be a slide that you could spend a lot of time with. So if we look on the left, we see Burgundy, which is in your glass, versus a New World wine, which would be, say, from New Zealand. And if we look at the color differences, I think one of the things that really shows out is the purple. The purple on the right for New Zealand is fruit. Remember we said New World Pinot Noir's got a lot more fruit. So you can see the difference between the left and the right. And the nice thing about this slide is that it gives you some ideas about what to pair. For young Pinot Noirs, they like pork and turkey and fish, and mature, they like the cheeses and so forth, like we talked about before.
Well, now we have our toasting slide in French. Mike, up. So we need to learn a little bit of, or practice, some of you already have French, a nice toast. À votre santé, à votre santé.
À votre santé.
To your good health. Of course, we can cut it short and just say santé, which is most of the time what happens. Okay. Now, for happy holidays, joyeuse fête. Joyeuse fête.
Joyeuse fête.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Joyeuse Hanukkah.
Joyeuse Hanukkah.
Very good. And
we're going to make us say this. This is not good.
This is not good. Joyeuse Hanukkah. Joyeuse fête. And of course, for Happy New Year, we're all looking forward to 2021. Bonne année.
Bonne année.
Bonne année. So, à votre santé, santé, joyeuse fête, joyeuse Hanukkah, and bonne année. Very good. Bonne année. Very good. Happy New Year and happy holidays, everybody, with a nice glass Burgundy.
Red Burgundy. Did you like the wine itself?
Yes, I did. This is very nice.
And the interesting thing, if you're there, there's a website, and we will certainly put this out through the alumni, but there's a nice little website called bourgogne.wines.com, which teaches you everything about Burgundy. So that would be the cultural thing that you were looking at, Dr. Johnson, as well as the wines coming from my perspective.
Well, I really enjoyed the limestone stone side of this wine.
It's very cool.
It's really nice.
Sadly, our time presses us onward to Spain. So there we go. So La Rioja, as you can see, is a region in northern Spain. And if you can see on the map, it's broken up into three sections: Rioja Alta, Altavesa, and Rioja Baja. And there's a big difference in quality. The highest quality comes from Rioja Alta, a little bit higher elevation. The higher elevation makes a little bit of a cooler climate. Going back to our Burgundy learnings, that means a little bit more acid. So that is a place for high quality Rioja. Altavesa produces probably middle of the road Rioja, and Rioja Baja, while it has a little bit more of a warmer climate, it produces very, very rich and robust Tempranillos. So the grape that we are actually tasting tonight is Tempranillo. So I'm going to ask Grace if she would pour our next wines for President Hsu and for Dr. Johnson. This is one of my favorite wines. I think Spain has really got it going on. Terrific stuff. And if we want to talk a little bit about history, we came from Burgundy, which is known to have planting starting at about the 1st century AD. And Rioja started about the 15th century. So this has been going on for quite a bit of time. But anyway, if we talk about a little bit about Rioja, it's got a connection. Basically, Rioja was put on the map about 1780 after some of the winemakers descended upon Bordeaux, where they learned how to put their wines in oak to make them spicy. So if you taste this wine, one of the things I've noticed about Tempranillo, especially from Rioja, is that there is a big difference between Burgundy and Tempranillo because of the spice. The color looks the same, but when you begin to taste this Rioja, I think that you'll notice that there is a much more of a spicier component. It kind of hits the gums and the cheeks a little bit. Do you find that, Dr. Hsu? Or Dr. Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah, there's almost like a pepper kind of,
Yeah.
or a spice
Exactly.
kind of touch. to it.
Exactly. Now, the other thing I was going to ask you is that if you do the same technique where you swallow and then exhale through your nose, does this wine last as long as the Burgundy?
No, not for me.
Very good. Dr. Johnson, you are a very good wine taster. That's excellent.
You're a
that you-
good teacher, Mike.
But you guys are starting to, so if we can see here, now this is a great slide because we look at, in Spain, they have what are called aging criteria. So there's what they call Joven, Crianza, Reserva, and Gran Reserva. And you can see the aging potential for the Tempranillo. The Tempranillo, I think, because of its style, will actually age a little bit better than red Burgundy. So if you wanted to possibly create a wine cellar, you could start here very, very well. They also make white wines in Rioja, as you can see from grapes listed on the very bottom of this slide. White Rioja has not really caught on in the U.S., but not to say that it's not a bad deal. I think it's something that people will get used to. So this is a very, very big bodied, big alcohol grape. It's got a lot of tannins. Now, tannins are these chemical structures that basically feel like sweaters on your teeth. So do you notice that when you're trying those wines?
So, is there a woody flavor almost, or?
There's a woody flavor, but like I said, this is a little bit more coating than the Pinot Noir. So what happens is that it kind of sticks to your teeth and makes your gums and your cheeks stick to your teeth, kind of like sticky.
Yeah. It also makes my tongue kind of sticky.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the tannins, which are much more bold than they are in the Pinot Noir. So this is really kind of stepping up the game. We're going up in intensity by going to this Tempranillo. And as you can see, it really does well with oak. The Pinot Noir also does well with oak, but the oak here is American oak. And so as a result, you're going to get a lot of that spice that you were talking about. You can see, for example, like this is probably a warmer vintage, so probably more of a dry, raisiny type of flavor. Are you getting that, Dr. Johnson and Dr. Hsu? A little bit more dried fruit, raisiny, kind of a richness to it that you didn't find in the Pinot Noir.
The raisin is a good description. That I can tell.
So you would need bigger and bolder foods to go with this. There is another website that I found for Rioja. It's called riojawine.com. Certainly, I will provide this information to the Alumni Association. Anyway, I think that what you'll see is that there's a different descriptor when it comes to the taste profile here. The other nice thing that nice thing about a Rioja is that once you open it, it does not go away quickly. In other words, it's got enough oomph to it that it will stick around. The Pinot Noir may fade over the course of time, but a Tempranillo certainly will not. I think the thing is that you can see that they've looked, that slide is also talking about some tapas dishes. I think it's got some chicken there and something else. You can see that the body, okay, is obviously medium to, it's much bigger than the Pinot Noir that we just came from, okay, and the tannins are much bigger. Now, they say you can sell her up to 10 years. I think that if you find a high-quality Tempranillo, you can certainly go much further. The other thing that you notice as you get into older vintages, as this begins to age, you take on some of that leather and tobacco notes, which are really characteristic of Rioja, which I find to be fascinating. You can see that there's American oak with the vanilla So vanilla is basically what you can also taste in the background from this as well. And again, this is the modern versus traditional. What you have in your glass is traditional. So again, looking on here, we see, I like dried fruits, I like cedar, I like cigar box, tobacco, as some of my identifiers for what I consider traditional Tempranillo. And are you finding any of that in the wine that you tasted?
There is this cigar box kind of,
That's one of the things
especially in,
I think that pulls this out of a blind taste when you're smelling and tasting Tempranillo. I think the cigar box really kind of gives it away. And and also a little bit of leather as it begins to age as well. So this is
it's
a
like I
wine.
walked into a small, nice library reading room
Yes,
where
and
somebody's, you got a little smell of the books and somebody's probably been smoking in there or had a cigar in there occasionally or,
this is great. You obviously are the wordsmith of the three of us, which is
I don't know.
terrific. Well, this is a lot of fun because I think the first two wines that we've tried so far, okay, the Burgundy and the Tempranillo, I think really do well. You can almost drink them alone. I mean, basically, you probably don't need to really pair them with food. They really are enjoyable. They're a great taste. They're so much fun. I really like them. And so what's happening is that over the course of time, the tannins will begin to drop out. And so some of that austerity that you have from these things that are gripping your tongue and gripping your teeth, and making things sticky, that will begin to precipitate out over the course of time. And as a result, the wine kind of smooths out. So actually, this is a grape that does better with time. I think it gets a little bit better, a little bit smoother.
So if this becomes smoother, this is a wine that you said, I'm trying to remember, would age well and would be something that you could start a cellar off of.
Oh, this would be easy because, for example, what you could do is you could buy a fairly young Crianza if you wanted to, and put it away for 10, 15 years. And what will happen is that it becomes smoother. The tannins, the grip and so forth, actually begin to settle out and make it smooth. Like the Pinot Noir that you had tonight, the red Burgundy, that was smooth. This wine has got a little bit more texture to it that I would call kind of like corduroy. What you tasted first was silky. This is more corduroy. And it grows, as you can see on this particular slide, in a lot of different areas inside of Spain. We're focusing on Rioja, but when you look at other areas, there are different names. The Spanish are famous for doing this. They call it Tinto Fino or Tinto del País and Sensibal and all these different names just to kind of make it tough for us to do these wine exams.
Well, now we get a chance to do the toasting, and the toasts you will see from Spanish-speaking world match the boldness more and spiciness of the wine. Of course, we can just say salud, which is health, but one of the longer toasts that I really enjoy is salud, amor, dinero. So we start out with health, love, and money. Salud, amor, dinero. But then it's really fun because y el tiempo para gozarlos. Salud, amor, dinero, y el tiempo para gozarlos, which is health, love, money, and the time to enjoy them. And that speaks to the holidays because we all enjoy, we all are pleased with the time to finally enjoy our blessings. Now, there's a fun one that the Spanish speaker peoples use, and that is arriba, which means up, arriba, and abajo, down, arriba, abajo, al centro, in the middle, and then y adentro, inside. So, arriba, abajo, al centro, y adentro, inside. And of course, Felices Fiestas and Feliz Hanukkah, nice greetings. So those are some great Spanish sayings for the holidays.
Those are terrific. I mean, I have been to Spain, and you're right on the mark with those. Yes, you find it on always Felicidades is what they say in the little bars when you're toasting each other, and it's always such a happy place to be. And when I was in Spain, I loved it, and I drank a lot of wine. Whew, that was fun. All right, let's go on to our next wine. Yes, Barolo. We are looking at a area of northwest Italy called the Piedmont. Okay. And what we're looking at here is something called the Nebbiolo grape. And this is the grape of Barolo and Barbaresco. As you can see on the map here, there are some towns here. There's Alba that perhaps some of you have visited. And we're looking at an area that grows a lot of other grapes, for example, Dolcetto, Barbera, and Bonarda. These are grapes that the Italians will drink on a daily basis. And this is a very, very busy slide. This is a blown up area of some of the areas around Barolo. As you can see, we talked about Dolcetto. So you can see Dolcetto being produced in Asti and Acqui and Novara. You see Barbera being produced in Monferrato and in Asti. And then all around this, there's a very, very tiny section called Barolo, if we go to the next slide. And here's Barolo. So when I was studying for my wine exams, I was looking at this slide until I was cross-eyed. So let's get our glass of Barolo, and let's have great for Dr. Hsu and Dr. Johnson, the glass of Barolo. And I want you to stick your nose in and see if you can come up with that tar and roses, which is so classic for Barolo. Now, that sounds gross, that you want to smell road, asphalt, and tar. But honestly, it seems to be a descriptor that works. And so when you're done smelling, take a taste and see if that tar and roses come to the forefront.
I never would have thought of that, but you're right.
I can smell the roses, but not the tar.
Well, I mean, the hardest thing for a lot of people is the roses, because a lot of times what you're having is, you're overwhelmed with this beautiful sight of this wine, and it looks like, purple. So you're thinking violets. You smell a little bit of, roses on the nose. But when you taste this is also tannic, like the Tempranillo. I mean, really, really tannic. This has got some serious legs. And in other words, there's a lot of things that go on with Barolo that are much different than the Tempranillo and the Pinot Noir.
Now, this taste stays with me for a while.
That's exactly the point.
The tannin?
This wine has got staying power. This is, if you were in Italy for the holidays and you got invited over to somebody's house for dinner or for the holidays, you would bring a bottle of your best Barolo. That is considered the custom. Barolo is called the king of wines. It has to age up to 3.5 to 4 years before they will even release it after it's been, picked and produced. So this takes quite a bit of time to get to market, hence the higher price. The other thing about this is because of the tannins being even higher than the Tempranillo, this will age for a huge amount of time, 50 years, 60 years, even longer. The specific little cruise that you see on the orange map, there's 12 communes for Barolo. There are 5 specific areas that have very, very distinct flavor profiles for Barolo. So understanding Barolo gets really intense. The overwhelming things that we taste, for example, are the tar and the roses. But when you start looking at these other communes, you can start going round and round in circles about what you're picking up. But why don't you try this again, exhaling through your nose. Exhaling through your nose, not through the mouth. So again, the other thing I notice about this grape for Barolo is that it does have some good acidity, but more important is the tannins and the flavors. So Dr. Hsu, you didn't pick up on the tar, but how about truffle or licorice? You pick up that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
There's
Right.
truffle.
There's a little bit of licorice in there, like black licorice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a little bit of truffle too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think people go crazy over Barolos. Because think about it, if you look at the tasting profile you see on the slide here, you've got roses all the way to licorice, and you've got all that stuff in between, which I think is really great stuff. I think people go crazy for stuff like this, and it goes so well with the stuff that you would eat around Christmas time. For example, meatballs, ossobuco, leg of lamb, crown roast, all these things that these big meals that people come over for and people prepare all day. Well, think about if you were preparing all day, want to be drinking Barolo because of the scents coming off of the food and the scents coming off of the wine. It's just a lot of fun to drink.
You know, I could really enjoy a glass of this with some cingale, wild boar, in the meats in Italy.
And so I actually have to throw in a little bit more medical here because in the 1800s, they were using this particular grape and this wine, Barolo, and they made a dessert wine called Chinato. And it's made from the same grape as Barolo, the Nebbiolo grape. And it was a bitter, semi-sweet dessert wine. You can still buy it. It's still available. It's still made. It was made specifically for colds and poor digestion. So imagine somebody saying, oh, you have some problems with your stomach, drink some red wine. That'll make you feel better. Interesting. I like that. I like that, doctor.
That's good advice.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. So again, we have all of these nice colors here. And Dr. Hsu, can you pick up any leather or maybe some anise?
I can pick up the leather. Yeah.
Yes.
So you've done very well tonight, Dr. Hsu. You've picked up a bunch of great stuff from these different tastings. That's really hard to do. I mean, I know that this is our first time doing this together, but that's pretty remarkable. Both you and Dr. Johnson have picked up on a lot of these great flavors, which I really compliment you on. You guys have an educated palate. Very good. Okay, next slide. And this is one of the slides that I use in my class. Now, I know it's very busy, but I think the things that you can begin to look at, for example, is stick your nose in the glass while you're looking at that wheel with all the different colors on the end of it, and see if maybe you're not smelling any like cranberry or cherry syrup, strawberry, raspberry, maybe a little cedar, a little tobacco. And this is out of a book called Wine Folly. And Wine Folly has this type of information available for a lot of grapes, and I think it provides a great deal of information. So this is something to think about for the future. If you guys are interested in educating your palate, picking up the book called Wine Folly. It has a lot of this information in there. And again, what you're looking at here is a richer, more mature Barolo. So again, we picked up on the licorice and the tar, and a little bit of truffle. Now, the question is there any bitter chocolate in there for the two of you?
Yes.
Nice. Perfect. We are looking at the difference between, traditional and modern Barolo. What we're tasting here is traditional. Okay, because this is old style, and you can see that there's quite a bit of oak to it and quite a bit of tannin. Modern Barolos are being created all over the place. And again, you can see that there's more of a fruit ripeness thing to it. So I'm kind of like a traditional Barolo guy. I like the old way. I think the new way is probably leaning toward the younger age group that likes fruit. But you can see on the bottom right, again, our food pairings, you can see how this really appeals to people with some really intense foods, with game and rich stews. And off we go to Dr. Johnson.
Well, now we are into Italian
Yes.
sayings, and these are the ones that we know more, that we use a lot common, like salute and chin chin for saying cheers. So we should say salute, salute,
Salute.
and chin chin.
Chin chin.
Yeah. And of course, buon Natale for Merry Christmas, buon Natale, and Feliz Hanukkah, Feliz Hanukkah
Feliz Hanukkah.
for all my Jewish neighbors, and buon anno nuovo,
Buon anno nuovo.
Very good. Buon anno nuovo. Happy New Year to everyone. Salute.
Salute.
Salute. There's a nice website called vincarta.com that talks a lot about the joys of wine. Napa Valley. Okay, so Napa Valley, people all know this as being Northern California. A lot of people consider this to be the best expression of the grape called Cabernet Sauvignon. What a lot of people may not know is that Cabernet Sauvignon is a cross between two other grapes, Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc, which is a white grape. The cross was made in the 1600s, and it wasn't until about the 17th century in Bordeaux that Cabernet really started to take off and really started to become a significant player. When we look at California and our Napa Cab, which we can now go ahead and pour for Dr. Johnson and Dr. Hsu, this is a wine that basically is a New World interpretation, and a lot of people think that this might be the best expression. I think if you wanted my impression about Napa Valley Cab, it's like drinking Jimi Hendrix. It's new, it's exciting, it's loud, it's bold, it's brash, it's opinionated, it's gonna smack you around whether you like it or not. So it's kind of a cool thing. One of the things, actually, I don't know if people know this, but Cabernet actually has a national holiday in the United States. It is the Thursday before Labor Day. It is Cabernet Sauvignon Day. And the interesting thing that's happened with Cabernet in California, it represents about 50% of the plantings in Napa Valley. And there's been some cult Cabernets that have been developed as a result. We've all heard of perhaps like Screaming Eagle or Harlan or Colgin. These are stratospherically expensive bottles of wine, and there are more coming. I've traveled quite a bit out to Napa. They are now getting anywhere from $60,000 to $65,000 per ton of fruit, which translates into a very expensive bottle of Cabernet. One of the things I think that you'll notice when you taste this one, let's go ahead and taste it and see what you think, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Hsu. Now, you're coming off of the Barolo, which is extremely tannic. Cabernet here has some tannins. But the thing I think you're going to notice about here is that you have this continuation of black fruit that you had from the Barolo. So you may have a little bit of black cherry, a little bit of black currant, maybe a little bit of blackberry.
It tastes less acidic to me.
Yes, you're exactly right. So less acid, but I think the thing that is interesting about this wine is that I would call it profound. There's no question when you drink this that this is something that hits all of the insides of your mouth and stimulates every part of your mouth. You know, there were differences, I think, with the Burgundy and the Tempranillo and the Barolo hitting different parts of the mouth, but I think this thing fills your entire mouth. And that's why I did it last. I think this is a really, really fun wine to drink. It's got a lot going on for it. It pairs with everything that we've already talked about before. The thing that you can do with this is that it does age reasonably well. It won't age as long as, say, the Barolo does. But I think that you'll see that there's a lot of interesting characteristics as to what Cabernet can be based on where it comes from. And if you look at some of the slides, there are different areas that I've listed, that some of them that you will have recognized with Howell Mountain and Diamond Mountain and Atlas Peak and so forth. These are all different areas that produce different styles of Cabernet. But the thing that I noticed most is depending on, now I haven't talked about vintage, but California is really sensitive to vintages. And so there can be a tremendous difference in the same wine from two different vintages. But the continuum that I find here is the richness. So I think this is, I mean, I would like your opinion on this, Dr. Hsu. Do you think this wine is richer than the others?
It's richer and it's smoother than the two previous ones. It's
You think
less
it's easier to
dense.
drink, right?
Yeah, yes.
And would you drink this without any food, or do you think that it would be better if you had it with a meal?
I think, well, to me, this without food seems to be better.
Yeah, especially around the holidays. And this can be, you can have a lot of fun with Cabernet. For example, you could have a party with friends that say, everybody bring a different Napa cab and you can all experiment, because a lot of people get used to what they're finding. For, example, like the black cherry and the black currant and the vanilla. These are all really cool things, and there's a lot of differences. We have tasted in our classes Bordeaux Cabernets, Australian Cabernets. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is that inside of Napa, there's an area called Rutherford and Oakville, which you can see on the map here. This is an area this used to be an ocean hundreds of thousands of years ago, maybe millions of years ago. And what happened is that they developed a bed of volcanic rock that came up from underneath the ocean and deposited around Rutherford and Oakville. And that's called the Rust Belt. And they call wines made here called Rutherford Rust, meaning that they have this rustic quality, intense cherry, a lot of minerality. It almost feels like, you should be checking your glass to see if any iron's going to fall out of it, because it's just so intense. And the other area that's also developing inside of Napa is a place called Coombsville. A little bit cooler, which means a little bit more acid and a little bit greater concentration. And these are the areas that I was talking about before. I mean, obviously these are reference slides, but again, these are different areas that make Cabernet. And even more so, for example, Oakville and Rutherford, I talked about as being, a lot of people consider that like the best California Napa cabs coming from those particular areas. But Howell Mountain and Mount Vita are doing well. And there's other areas that are actually up and coming. So you could spend time going over this. It would be a lot of fun, but I think we should move forward. And I think what I'll do is I will turn this back over to Tim Johnson to finish this up and tell me what you think about the wine for tonight.
Well, Mike, I have to admit that I'm partial to the Spanish wines.
There you go.
I guess I like it a little spicy, the wine. And although I learned something about the California wines tonight that I tasted in them that you had listed among the flavors, I was trying to place it when I first tasted it, and that was bell pepper. There was a vegetable quality in it somehow that was not present in the other wines. So
that's indicative of California, and that's also something you pick up in Australian wines quite a bit.
So what was your favorite tonight, President?
I actually like the Napa Valley.
Did you like the Napa Valley wines? Excellent.
It's smoother to me, yeah.
Well, what you said was really the case. I could see myself drinking the Napa Valley wine without a meal, without
Right.
food, just enjoying a glass. Mike, we want to thank you a lot. I'll turn it over to the President for a final toast. But just before we do, I have one more phrase I'd like to teach. And since I am a Latin and Greek professor by training, we must have a little bit of Latin, because Greeks were the ones where toasting first originated, where they would pour libations to the gods. So here's a Latin phrase for us all: nunc est bibendum. You want to try that? Nunc
Est
bibendum.
Nunc est bibendum.
Very good, which means now you must drink. The Italians and Romans were very straightforward, so we'll remember that this holiday. Nunc est bibendum.
Nunc est bibendum.
And now a final toast from the President for the college.
Well, let me first thank Mike. Thank you for the great lecture. I learned quite a bit today. And thank you, Tim. On behalf of the College of Charleston and our nearly 95,000 alumni, thank you all, those of you who join us online, for joining us this evening. Please mark your calendar for Thursday, January 28th, to celebrate our second annual CFC Day. The college will be turning 251-year-old. Think about it, 251-year-old. And only 12 other colleges in the nation have celebrated this anniversary before. You will receive information on ways to participate in the next few weeks. And in the meanwhile, we wish you and your loved ones a happy and healthy holiday season. Cheers.
Cheers.
And good night.
Good night.